Welcome to the Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by X2 Comedy. If you're looking to get more out of your Shenandoah Valley experience, then this is the podcast for you. You'll meet interesting people, musicians, and comedians that perform here and find out more about what you can do and see. Whether you live here or plan to visit, listen to explore what makes our unique slice of heaven. Now here's your host, Don Davis Womack.
Hello, Laughers. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Jake Woetzel, the inn manager and historian of Joshua Wilton House. This house is an elegantly restored Victorian home that occupies a corner of the historic Old Town District in downtown Harrisonburg. This fine dining restaurant, bed and breakfast, and venue for private events and weddings was originally the home of Joshua Wilton circa 1888. It has quite the history that we will learn a little bit more about today, with an extensive wine list, classically French-trained chefs, farm-to-table ingredients, and pristine inn rooms. The current Joshua Wilton House guarantees an unforgettable experience. Jake began in hospitality at the age of 16 while working for a Civil War-era hotel in the Appalachian Mountains. Whether it is researching Wilton's family history, photographing cocktails, running their social media, or planting and cultivating the chef's garden, Jake plays a part in all aspects of the Wilton House. As the inn manager, Jake is responsible for cooking breakfast and serving guests in the mornings and is the main point of contact for inn reservations. Welcome to the show, Jake. It's great to have you on today.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, this is so exciting. We just met recently at a tourism meeting, which was really cool. And I have since had so much fun reading up a little bit more about you, preparing for this interview today, and Joshua Wilton House. And I was excited to learn from your bio that you are a James Madison University alum. You are, and developed you have developed a passion for managing bed and breakfast, curating art galleries, restoring techniques, gardening, and more, the bio says. So we're going to find out what that more is today, too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to fill you in, although I think you'd be surprised a little bit by the answer. So,
okay, well, we will see. So let's start with this. What did you study at JMU?
I studied biological anthropology. So I studied humans and their history and how we got here from a biological standpoint, but I concentrated in forensics. So I went on to study forensic anthropology after James Madison.
Very cool. So you worked somewhere else before Joshua Wilton House? After JMU? Yeah.
Yep, I hopped around a little bit. I worked a little bit at the body farm in Tennessee at the University of Knoxville.
Okay.
And I worked in Peru for a little bit as well. Concentrating on mass graves there and basically how you go about digging those up from an archaeological perspective, which has nothing to do with hospitality. The guests don't talk too much when you're doing archaeology. But I do have to say, this has always been a passion for me, and it's always been what I supplemented my income with when I was in school. So while I loved what I studied, and I loved the travel and loved meeting people and working with different scientists, I always had a passion. This was the thing that I was thinking about when I was sitting in a lab somewhere. I was just thinking about what I could cook or go outside and garden the next day and that sort of thing. So it was kind of always on the back burner for me. And then I just made a split and decided to keep my studies as a study and just enjoy those on the side and do this full time as an inn manager.
That is quite the story. And I must back up a minute because you said a phrase I had never heard of before. Okay. What in the world is a body farm that exists in Knoxville, Tennessee? Are there more than one body farm out there? What does this mean?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm opening a whole can of worms for a bad pun, I suppose. But it's just kind of the short colloquial term for anthropology, or a forensic center, I should say. So it's basically a designated area of land in Tennessee. It was actually the first one in the United States. It was in the 1980s by Bill Bass, who started it. But it's 2 acres where you can donate your body to science, and it decomposes naturally. And students come and watch and take pictures, take measurements. So actually in the 80s, that was the cutting edge of forensics, really, and understanding what happens to us after we die. And so, there's one in Tennessee. Now I believe there's one in Texas. one in Australia that opened up. So they're starting to pop up, but Tennessee had the first one.
That is so fascinating. I never heard of such a thing. So what do they hope to learn from studying people that have donated their bodies to science this way? What are they hoping to learn?
All sorts of stuff. And it depends upon the person who's studying them and what they're focusing on. So I met a few people who are doing biometrics to see how long you can get a retinal scan or how long you can get fingerprints after death. And they were actually being funded by the Army because they were able to go out and use these techniques on soldiers whose bodies had been in the field for a while. So we figured those out. We can figure out entomologically the bugs that are there and when they get there, what predation looks like on a body or scavenging looks like on a body. Hold on,
time out. What's predation?
So predation, not so much. Predation would be if something was preying on a human body. So a bear, what those marks would look like, versus scavenging if you've already passed, what rodent teeth looks like. Raccoons are pretty vicious. Raccoons love to eat human bodies.
Wow.
Yeah, none of this is appetizing, by the way. Anything to do with the restaurant. But I love studying it, and it was fascinating to study. And I'm going to donate my body after I'm done with it, I suppose, so other people can get use out of it.
Hey, laughers, Tisha here. You know what goes great with this podcast? Free Popsters Gourmet Popcorn. We're so excited to sponsor this podcast, highlighting some of the most wonderful people in the Shenandoah Valley. To show our love for you, laughers, we're giving you 15% off today at prepopsters.com. That's PREPOPSTEROUS.com. Use promo code LAUGH15.
That is so fascinating. Yes. And so that is what you were doing after JMU, but you had your love for hospitality began early. I see from your bio, because you were working at a Civil War era hotel in the Appalachian Mountains, age 16. Yes. What was the name of that hotel? Where is it located? And what was your job?
Of course. Yeah. A lot of people might be familiar with it. It's been around for a long time, but it's named Shrinemont, and it's back near Orkney Springs, back near Bryce and that sort of area. But it kind of looks like The Shining. It's a big white hotel in the middle of nowhere, but hundreds of acres, beautiful cabins and everything there. And I grew up back there, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So that was my first job. And yeah, it was gorgeous. So just working in a big, beautiful historic building, tons of landscaping to be done. I was cooking for guests and serving guests and all that stuff. So I was about 15, 16 when I started that job. And I continued to, like I said, do those jobs to basically fund my studies and all those things at the university. But it was just always a passion that I had, basically.
Yeah, the passion began there to manage your bed and breakfast and be an inn manager. You also curate art galleries. You're passionate about that, restoring antiques, gardening, and more. Is that what you were doing also in the Civil War era hotel? Is that where the art gallery passion kind of birthed and the antiques?
Well, I would definitely say I worked my way up.
Okay.
So at 15 and 16, I was not doing all of that for sure. Right. At that position, basically I was doing anything they wanted me to do. So I started off as a dishwasher. I became a server. Then I became a cook. Then I did housekeeping. Then I worked at the front desk for a little bit. I did maintenance. So I was there for about 3.5 years, and I wanted money as a teenager. So I had a car I wanted to pay for and all that stuff. So yeah, I did anything and everything I could. And then as I worked my way through other businesses, especially coming to the Wilton house, the Wilton has really been the chance that I've had to start a chef's garden and work with the chefs and see what they want to use, what the bartenders could use. We have ample space here for artwork as well. So as I've always really enjoyed artwork, now I have the space and the pool of artists in Harrisonburg to be able to reach into and offer them to show artwork in the area and stuff like that. So it's definitely grown with time. I did not have the skills for antiques either when I was 15 or 16, but I've developed those over time as well. So yeah, if I can find an old piece of furniture, if I can paint a different wall color, anything like that, I'm excited about it. That gets me going for the day.
That's exciting. And then the and more part of your bio with regards to passions. What are those?
I love photography, which I don't believe is, too far out there these days. A lot of people enjoy photography, but I enjoy macro photography. So I try to see the very small bits of the world that we kind of usually step over or gloss over. So I enjoy the fine details of like mud on the side of a riverbank or just, up close picture of a fly or something like that. I just really enjoy macro photography.
Is that what that is? Macro photography?
Yes. Yeah. So It's usually something that instead of like a 1-to-1 scale. So if I took a picture of a cup and I printed it and it was the same size that the cup was in real person, that's a 1-to-1 scale. Macro is taking something that's much smaller, photographing it. And when you would print it or see it, it's actually at a much larger scale, of course, than what it would be.
Oh, you're teaching me so many things today, Jake.
Jack of all trades. Yes, I love photography. So I've been doing that for many years. I did it while I was studying forensics as well. And I've switched and I photograph people and bodies and food and cocktails. So kind of everything in between, I suppose.
The whole spectrum of life. You've got it covered.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is great that you're working in a historic home then, because it's serving people that are living in this time now, attached to a house with such rich history, which is very fascinating to me. And I was reading about how it's been used and functioned over the years before it opened as an inn and restaurant in 1988, which is the 100th anniversary of the house. I would love, as you being the historian of Joshua Wilton, if you can share some of that history with the Laughers today.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm very appreciative of the first owners when it transitioned into a bed and breakfast and a restaurant, because they opened it on the 100th anniversary. So it makes the math pretty easy. So we've been a restaurant now as of 2023 for 34 years. And so it makes the math pretty simple in that area to just do, 100th anniversary and then plus however long we've been open. And so for us, the anniversary was in 1988. It was just a bed and breakfast for the first little while until they got the restaurant up and going. But I guess to start at the very beginning, Joshua Wilton himself was an immigrant to the area. So he moved here in the mid to late 1800s and started his own hardware store. And from there, he just really became an influential guy in the area. I'm definitely paraphrasing, but his motto is essentially grass is green where you water it. So he poured a ton of money back into the downtown area. We actually have some photographs in the house. People do visit us of when the house was originally built, and it's right downtown, but there is nothing around the house.
Wow.
It's just all farmland, and it's in what is now the, big packed center of Harrisonburg, I suppose, downtown Harrisonburg. So he had that house built and he just really cycled his money back through Harrisonburg itself. So he was on the Chamber of Commerce. He was the president of the National Bank. He was on the board of hospital trustees, all sorts of things. He also was part owner of one of the hotels that was downtown in Harrisonburg. So he became a really, really well-known, influential businessman in the area. And basically from there, he did end up retiring and moving to Richmond, which is where he passed away. But his kids kept this home for a while as well under the Wilton name. And then it was the Shank family a little bit, which the Shanks might recognize that if you have any listeners that are Shanks.
Yeah.
I have a lot of guests that come back that tell me a ton of stories about when they were grandchildren, basically, and running around their grandparents' house here at the Wilton house. So I hear a lot of tales about that. It was after the Shanks, it was converted for a short while into apartments as well. So there was people that lived here in the 70s when it was an apartment, which I would love to hear more stories about. And I would say the most stories I hear are probably from its days as a fraternity. It was the Teak fraternity for JMU.
I bet, yeah.
Yep. So from the 70s to the early 80s, it was the Teak fraternity. And they have come back and done reunions with us in the past. So it's about like 150 to 200 people by the time they bring, husbands and wives. They come back, do a big reunion with us, and I hear even more stories. So,
sure.
Yeah, I definitely gather a lot of tales from the people who have lived here, of course, in the past. And also down in Dayton, they have a fantastic museum that has a lot of Wilton's records. So they have archives there, and they've been kind enough to let me go down to Dayton and just sit through and painstakingly flip through all their pages while they just patiently wait for me to finish. But it's a fantastic museum. So if anybody gets a chance to go down to Dayton and check that out, I would highly recommend it. But that way we got to see what Joshua Wilton was buying, what he was selling, what his wife was buying for the home. You can see where she bought X amount of rolls of wallpaper, or she bought 5 yellow buttons, and that's
wow.
So yeah, it's a lot of history under this roof for sure. And then it's even just as a restaurant, for being a restaurant for 30 years, over 30 years. I have guests that come in that tell me some hilarious tales and some goofy tales. And yeah, it's a really great place to work. So it's all up in my head, but we also put it on our website, and we take guests through tours. So I'm kind of the historian here for sure, but I'm always trying to put it down on a piece of paper so that whenever I'm gone, in 100 years, other people also have that information as well.
That is really great. Thanks for sharing that history. So the museum in Dayton, Virginia, what is the name of that? Can you tell us that? Of course,
it is the Heritage Museum in Dayton, and I highly recommend it. They've been kind enough to let me down there and study. And they're open as well throughout the week. So you're welcome to go down there and tour. You can call ahead of time if you're interested as well, which is what I did. But they're very, very friendly and basically open door.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a beautiful home. I've been in there. I haven't stayed overnight yet. That's a bucket list. And, it's kind of weird sometimes to stay in a bed and breakfast in the same town you live in. But staycations are amazing. So that's on the bucket list. But I have had dinner there, which has been lovely. And I love the features of the home. And I would love if you could share what features of the house have survived the multiple transitions through the years.
Of course. Yeah. And a lot of the information that I've received over the years about the pieces that have stayed are either through photographs that I can find from, say, the 1980s, where I'm like, oh, that column is surprisingly still there, even after the fraternity days, or from guests coming in and explaining their history to me as well. And so, for instance, when you come in the entryway of the home, there's a large mirror that's kind of mounted and inset into the wall. And I've had guests that are in their 70s and 80s say that when they were young children, they'd have to practice the violin in front of that mirror all the time.
Really?
Yep. They weren't happy about it at the time, but they're happy now to still see it there. Have people again in maybe like the 50s and in their 50s and 60s currently who were in the fraternity. They'll tell me all sorts of stories about, oh yeah, we took this from the house, but we brought it back. We accidentally broke this, but we replaced it. And interestingly enough, I've actually had 2 separate guests bring items back to the home within the last few years that when the fraternity kind of dissolved, they took with them. So one of them was a beautiful clock that was found up in the attic, just stuffed in between 2 boards with some insulation over it. And he called me, and he lives in Colorado now. And he said, when I left the fraternity, I took this clock with me and I wanted to bring it back. So he brought it back. He had family in the area and drove cross country with this clock from 1815 and brought it back. We chatted about it for a while, and now it's back in its quote unquote home, I suppose. So pieces like that, I'm so happy to see come back. And if anybody's listening out there and they have a piece from the Wilton house, I'm all ears. I'll take it back. If you have any history, I'll take it. If you have pictures, I'll take them. But yeah, so things like a clock. We've had a mantle place come back to us that had an inlaid mirror. We had a guest come back and he's like, I stole this 30 years ago. He's like, I feel like I should bring it back now. So yeah, things like that are fantastic to have back in the home. The outside windows as well are original to the house on the 2nd and 3rd story, but rumor has it that there was no windows left on the 1st floor once the fraternity was done with it. It was all just plexiglass and tarps. So a lot of the repairs were made in the 1980s. They spent about 2 solid years just renovating it after the fraternity had it. So I'd like to say she's in her retirement phase now, even though we're open 24/7. There's no fraternity parties happening, and no ice skating on the parquet floors anymore. No motorcycles going up the stairways.
Yeah, that's actually good.
Yes.
That's actually good. And that's wonderful that the fraternity brother brought the clock back. That's great. Where is the clock now located in Joshua Wilton House?
It's in this video. It's actually right over my shoulder.
Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
actually
gosh.
just this tall clock right here.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I put it up and I have a small plaque with it that says thanks to Len. Len, thank you. He's the guy who brought it back from the fraternity days. So
Yes,
I just
thank
have a
you,
little
Len.
thank you. Yep.
Yes. We
So anybody else
appreciate
that wants to
you.
bring us any pieces, I'm happy to have it.
That's right. Thanks for coming clean and bringing it back.
Exactly. Yep. That guilty conscience after about 30 or 40 years.
I know. It can happen, you
Yeah.
know. It can
Right.
happen. What are some of the other unusual and surprising discoveries over the years have you guys found?
Yeah, so I myself am the one currently crawling through a lot of crawl spaces to fix things. Since this home has been tweaked and fixed over its 134-year history, there's a lot of small cubby spaces, nooks, crannies, all those sort of things that then open up into very, very large passageways. So, and I am the only one that's been in them for probably 10, 15 years. So I actually just came across, this is weird, but a beer can from the 90s, from the 1990s.
Oh, wow.
I have found anatomy and physiology notes from the 70s.
Oh my gosh.
From the fraternity days that were stuffed back in the wall or in the insulation. One of the more interesting things actually was somebody's signature that was in a crawl space, and it was on the wallpaper from the 1940s, and they had signed the date. It was January 4th, 1949. And I took a picture of it and I put it on our social media so people can check it out if they're interested. But one of the great things about that is I had guests comment and she said, "Oh, that's my dad, actually. He was in the military at the time. He must have been back on leave because it was right after the holidays, beginning of the new year."
Wow.
And he signed his name up there, and we still have it now, close to 70 odd years later. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That even gave me goosebumps. That's really amazing.
So I love, anytime I'm in a crawl space, I would say it's probably 80% dust, but there is that small chance that I'm going to find something really cool back there. Even if it's a carving or initials, I'm excited about it. We redid the floors many years ago, and we ripped those up. We found signatures from the guys in the fraternity who had carved their names on the steps, written them in pen, all that stuff. So there's always something to find.
They left a lot of little artifacts behind.
Definitely.
That's great. What are you hoping to do in these crawl spaces? Why are you going up in there? Are you working on restoring something?
Absolutely. Yeah. My goal is to first and foremost just check the health of the home. So go through, make sure that there's no leaks, that the insulation is doing pretty well, that there's no wires that we don't need. The amount of electricians that have come through here over the last couple of years is insane. And sometimes they'll just cut a wire and put another one somewhere. So I'll start pulling on a wire and it's 20 feet of nothing. It just keeps coming and coming and coming, and it's never attached to anything. So I'm clearing out those spaces. But honestly, in a lot of them, I'm seeing if there's any renovations that we could do to potentially make our space bigger. So for instance, on the third story is another in-suite. So it is a full 3 bedrooms upstairs, full kitchen, and this is all above our in-rooms and above the restaurant. So in that space, we do have the potential to crawl up into that space, knock it out, and make it into a beautiful A-frame. So I've been crawling up into the 4th story, which is technically our attic. And then, I'm in the basement, I'm in the side crawl spaces. So whether it's a matter of just me filling, caulking, and insulating something, or if it's me potentially seeing if we can renovate that space to make our rooms a little bit bigger, or see if we can run something in a better, more efficient manner. But really, I just like crawling into spaces with like a little headlamp and just going back there. So that's exciting to me.
Yeah, with your forensic background, you are quite the investigator.
Yeah, it's kind of like the forensics of a home, I suppose.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
It is. And you have a cooking background, which is really great, serving in the morning, but you also have this amazing executive chef, Tom French, He has quite the resume. I was reading how he's born and raised in England, started going to culinary school at age 16, and was awarded an internship at Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, where he cooked for the Queen of England and her guests. That is amazeballs. That really, really is. What else should we know about your chef and the food at Joshua Wilton House?
Yeah, thanks for asking. He is fantastic. He has been here for well over a decade. Very, very talented guy. I've had the pleasure of working with him for close to 9 years now. And he is classically French trained. His dad actually owned a restaurant in the UK. So you could say he kind of grew up in restaurants as well, which is something he and I have in common. My mom was a bartender for many years, so I spent many a night at a restaurant or a bar. And so Tom and I were kind of cut from the same cloth, and he's a very, very hard worker. He, with his classical French background, he does a lot of stripped down proteins, so you can really taste the flavor of the meat. He does a fantastic job with seafood. That's kind of his forte, I would say. But my favorite thing that he prepares is duck. I absolutely love how he prepares duck. But yeah, he is like most chefs. He is particular. He likes things done a specific way. He is the quietest chef I've ever worked for. I've worked for some very, very loud chefs. He goes the opposite route. If he's very quiet, you know something's wrong. But I'll take that. I'll take it. But yeah, he's a fantastic guy. He keeps a level head, of course. He's a dad, so he just loves being able to come in, serve really quality food. And I think chefs can understand and relate to this, that you're oftentimes not seeing the guest come back into the kitchen and say thank you or say they really enjoyed it. So he basically gets all of the feedback from servers and from other staff. And so we try to just tell him as often as possible, be like, they loved the X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. And to him, sometimes he's like, okay, well, that's nice. I want them to love A through Z. I want them to love everything. Like, don't just tell me 3 things. Like, I need to know that they love everything. So he's hard on himself, because I think a lot of chefs are. And I think that's what makes him really, really good at his job as well, is that he has a very high standard for himself. And so when he has chefs come in to train with him or work with him, he's a great guy. But he's also going to, hold your feet to the fire in a very lovely way. So he'll do a lovely, quiet British accent, but but he's not too mean. He's not like a Gordon Ramsay level of chef at all. So I've loved working with him. He's very, very talented. He has quite a taste for things that are curried as well. So if you love things that are unique or interesting, for instance, currently on the menu, we have a curried parsnip puree with bacon roasted Brussels sprouts, seared scallops, and a pomegranate dressing. And I would have never thought to put bacon with Brussels sprouts with scallops with curry. And it is amazing. And we have a ton of great guest feedback on it and stuff like that. So I'm so proud of how his mind works as well, and how he's able to even come up with some of these dishes. But he's been at the Wilton House for about 13, 14 years now, and I hope he stays for at least that same amount of time.
It sounds like he strives for excellence. That's my kind of person right there.
Definitely does.
Yes, and he's doing farm to table menus, and I imagine part of that includes the garden that you all have right there on ground. So what kinds of food in the garden does he utilize to create these wonderful dishes?
Yeah, we try to source really everything we can from around the home and then just radiating outwards. So if we can work with local Shenandoah Valley farms before we work with anybody outside of the valley, we will. And then it just kind of radiates outwards from there. So especially on the grounds of the house, our garden itself is not massive, but it's about 6 feet by 32 feet long, the one main garden. And then we have a bunch of side beds and stuff. But we will grow everything from about 5 or 6 different types of tomatoes, cherry tomatoes and larger heirloom tomatoes as well. We grow lettuces, strawberries, zucchini, squash, green beans. Edible flowers are a really big one, because we can use them just as a garnish on soups, on cheese plates. The bartenders can freeze the flowers in an ice sphere and put that in a cocktail. So you don't have to taste the flower, but it's just frozen in a sphere. Cool. Yep. Lots of herbs, rosemary, thyme, mint, we really grow everything that we can. As much as I can cram into that space in a healthy way, I will try to do it. So that's kind of my baby. I give the chefs a list and I say, what do you want me to grow? And then if I have space for more stuff, I put in what I want to grow. And we just go from there. So we have a fantastic garden. I do have to say, from the 1980s onwards, they were throwing a bunch of the scraps and everything from the kitchen under the pavers that are now the garden. So it used to just be stepping stones and a solid space up there. So now as I'm digging through the garden, I'm finding chicken bones and all these other things as well, but it's made for fantastic soil. So we do actually have quite a luscious garden when it is in season.
Oh, that's really great. I love how your experience and history and things you've done in your own life leading up to this point are all contributing to creating those unforgettable experiences. It's really just amazing kind of how your life just kind of puzzle all come together right now.
Thank you. I want to say I feel like I'm very lucky, but I also recognize it was work. But also, I can't help but feel lucky that I have a ton of different passions that I'm able to kind of meld into one business that occupies people for a bunch of different reasons. And then I get to talk about it to people. So it's even better.
It is. You have a great team over there. I was reading about your general manager also, Jenna Kinney, who is another JMU grad and valuable asset to your team by managing the day-to-day operations, doing a fantastic job. And it looks like she continues to expand her knowledge and expertise. In fact, next up for her is the sommelier training to expand her knowledge of wine and service. For the laughers not familiar with sommelier training, what does that involve and what is it all about?
Of course, it is quite extensive if you're going to become a sommelier, and there's different levels to it as well. So it isn't a requirement to have any sort of level or certification as a sommelier in order to work here, but it does definitely help because we have quite a large wine list. And so especially for the staff members that have already gotten their sommelier certifications, they have been great tools in helping somebody like Jenna in order to study, give them study materials, give them tips. But essentially, it is a very, very, very detailed, in-depth test of your knowledge about wine. And so what regions tend to be known for what type of wine, what grapes grow best where. And it does get into very, very specifics as far as like, all right, well, is this a left bank or a right bank wine? Because the right bank gets certain types of deposits from the river. So the minerals in the soil and everything will make the grapes taste differently on one side of the river than they do on the other side of the river, or a little bit further up the river than they do in the southern end of the river. Elevation makes a big difference. So I give full credit to anybody that has their levels of Psalms. I do not. I love to drink wine, but I'm not that skilled. But there are people who can smell it, taste it, and they'll be able to tell you exactly where it's from, probably who made it, and maybe even the vintage, what year it was made. So they're very, very skilled. It is a huge test. If anybody's out there interested in taking it, it is fun to know. It is great knowledge and it is great on a resume. It is also hard work. So just make some flashcards, study, get a friend, drink wine, and learn it that way. So Jenna's doing all that right now, minus the drinking wine, right? But she's studying and we're helping her out study with that. We have another staff member here, Ben Miller, who many people probably know. He's been here for a long time. He's our sommelier, certified official sommelier on staff. So he's teaching her, and we always at least make sure we have one on staff. But it is a tough gig. But aside from the sommelier training, I would say Jenna does a fantastic job at managing the house. So she's our general manager. She's been here for probably about 6 or 7 years now, going on 7. And she handles all of the private events. She manages the staff and trains the staff. So she's definitely one of the key elements here, her, Tom, and myself.
Yeah, that's really great. I like how you said levels of Psalms.
There's a level 1 Psalm, level 2, and level 3.
Oh,
so
okay.
It is intense.
Golly, to get that level 1 certification, how long does that typically take? Do you know?
The test itself for level 1 sommelier certification is, I want to say, a few hours. for the whole process. But the studying in of itself is dependent upon you. It's really however you feel like you're comfortable. If you know the knowledge, you can study for however long you need and then basically apply, go take the test. And if you flunk it, it's kind of like driver's ed. You just get to go back and study again and then just go retake the test again. And if you fail, you just try again.
Okay. Yeah. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go again. Drink some more wine. Keep studying.
And getting your sommelier certification too. It is very fun information. For me, I enjoy studying all that stuff. I know for some people they'd rather just sip the wine, and I don't blame them. So.
Yeah. Speaking of sipping wine, you have a Joshua Wilton House Happy Hour special for just $20 per guest. Now, I love me a good happy hour, Jake. So let's talk about it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to us about this special. What do you get with it? Do you have to make reservations or anything?
For our happy hour, we don't recommend or require reservations. You're welcome to just walk in, especially with the weather getting nicer. We have a wraparound front porch. We have our private back patio next to the chef's garden. So people can just come in and join us for that happy hour. And basically what it is for $20, you can select any of our appetizers. So soup, salads, pork belly, cheese plates, any of those sort of things, plus any wine, beer, or cocktail of your choice. So you could choose any local bottled beer. We have local wines. And then, of course, our bartenders make a great craft cocktail. So you could select the mussels and do it with a Moscow Mule or a glass of Chardonnay, and it's just $20. And so people can come in, and if they just want to have a light meal and just do a glass of wine and a drink after work, they're welcome to do that. Or you can make a whole meal out of it, and you could do mussels and a glass of wine and then switch into pork belly and a beer and just move on however you'd like and do however many courses. But we do that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 4:30 to 6. So it's technically a happy hour plus because it's more than an hour. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4:30 to 6, and no reservations necessary. They can just come in whenever they would like.
You're going to be seeing me there for sure.
Good. And I'm usually off work at that time. So we can
shoot. Yeah, you can come just hang out with me then. There we go.
Afterwards.
All right, we're going to do that, Jake. We're going to get this. We're going to make this happen.
Okay, I'll put you through a crawl space first, though.
Oh, yes, I want to do that. Please.
Nice. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of the crawl spaces, they're above these rooms, right? The rooms in the inn. So I would love to talk about your bed and breakfast rooms that you have available and how many, and some descriptions perhaps, just to give us a bit of a visual of what they look like.
Of course. Thanks for asking. Our inn rooms are basically the original 5 rooms of the house, but they've just been reconfigured over the times to have their own bathrooms. And especially at the one point in time, it was split up into apartments. So it was kind of a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom. But overall, we have 5 bedrooms for our inn guests right now in the house. And hopefully in the future, we'll be renovating our 3rd story to add an inn suite as well. But right now, it's just the 5 bedrooms. They have queen size beds in 2 of the rooms and then king size beds in 3 of the rooms. So we have the options if you wanted to come and treat yourself and just have a huge bed. Even if you're just one person, we do have 3 different kings in here. And then they're all styled a little bit differently as well. So I've taken the time to decorate each one and give it its own kind of aesthetic. So the room I'm sitting in right now, not that you'll be able to see it, is dark red, and it's called the study. So it has exposed bricks. We have a ton of books in here, antique writing desks, bookshelves. And then, for instance, another room is called the lavender room, and that one's painted with a really soft lavender, but I've designated that to have all of the blueprints of the house. Oh, so cool. It's lavender walls with gold frames, but it's massive blueprints of the landscaping from maybe the 1980s or even earlier blueprints if I have them. And so if guests wanted a certain type of experience in the home, they could choose a room that maybe feels a little bit more comfortable for them. So if they wanted one that overlooks the garden, they can choose that room. If they wanted something where they could really sit down and look at blueprints, like I said, they could do that. So all of our rooms also have their own private bathroom and heating, air conditioning units, and all of those sort of things. And I would say one of the best selling points for our inn rooms is that breakfast is included in the room rate. So I cook breakfast for the guests in the morning. We do about 3 to 4 courses. So we'll do fresh fruit, we do a pastry, parfait, and then we'll always do a hot entree as well. So we really make sure that people are stuffed before they hit the road and that their beds are comfortable, that it's nice and quiet. I just absolutely love our in rooms. It's something that I get to tweak a little bit every week. I get to have local artwork up here as well. And we get to host artists and teachers for JMU and everybody else that's coming to town. I recently had some guests that were playing a show down at the Golden Pony. So the musicians all stayed here, which was really fun.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoy having these in rooms, and they're massive rooms as well with, the original 12-foot ceilings in them as well. So it's just beautiful. So even if it is a local couple and they, don't want to stay in the same town that they live in, I still recommend doing a staycation just because it's a night out. Maybe if you just need a night away from the kids, if you have a sitter, just take the chance to come stay in a nice quiet room and then just have a really great breakfast in the morning.
Yeah, I was just thinking it could make a good anniversary weekend or whatever for the couples that even live here. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. I highly recommend it if you just need a getaway, just to make a birthday night out of it, anniversary, date night, something like that.
Yeah. And then get tickets to a comedy show, an X2 comedy show.
That is a great suggestion.
Right? I mean, just putting all the ideas out there, you know, which is a great segue to my next question about special events at your inn that are open to the public. You kind of talked about this, having different artwork there. And I think you have a Meet the Artist event, or you have those that's open to the public, and some other events. Can you share some of that with our laughers today?
Absolutely. Yeah. So our home is basically open to the public anytime. So I'm here in the mornings because I take care of the inn guests, and then the restaurant's generally open the evenings with our general manager here. So even if people wanted to swing by and just do a tour of the home, I'm happy to take them on a tour of the garden, take them upstairs, give them a brochure of the history. I'll make them a cocktail if they want to try a cocktail. So our door is open, really, if anybody even just wanted to stop by, take a peek at the artwork or anything like that. So that's kind of just the open door policy that we have. As far as a more set event, the Meet the Artist event is one of the public events that you don't need a reservation for. And it's our way of kind of hosting artists and having a way for our guests to come and meet them and rub elbows. And so hopefully whenever we have that, we set it right up in the middle of an artist's time showing with us. So say, for instance, I have an artist showing from April to July. We might put their showing or their event right in the middle of that time period. So sometime in May, potentially, or June. And what that allows is for people to see all the artwork first, kind of see ones that they really enjoy, and we can let them know about the upcoming event. And after we have the event, people can still come in, and it's not too late at that point to get her artwork. So it's an open house. People can come in. We do wine, cheese, fruit, coffee, tea, all of that for guests to be able to come in and enjoy and just chat with the artist and go upstairs, take a peek at our rooms, again, have a cocktail if they want to, and that sort of thing. So our artists really enjoy it, and it's their way to get their name out there. We promote them, of course, on our social media as well. And it's a really fantastic way for us to reach out to the local universities, for instance, JMU, and say, hey, if your students who are not from the area, but are art students, want to see what artwork is like in the Valley, have them come walking right down from the campus to just come into our home and meet a local artist and see their work. And we've actually, from that, ended up hosting JMU students as artists here as well. So traditionally, we do a lot of local artwork, but we have hosted fine art students from JMU as well.
Wow, that's really great. And the artist comes and kind of talks about their artwork, or is at least available
Absolutely.
to speak about it. Yeah.
They chat about it, rub elbows with everybody. It ends up being a lot of familiar faces because Harrisonburg is a smaller town. So I see a lot of familiar faces, of course. But yeah, it's fantastic. So they're also, our artists are always welcome to bring more items than what's just on the walls for those events. So sometimes it can actually turn into like an art conference to where we have easels and tables and everything full of stickers and notebooks and smaller prints and pens and stuff like that too. So it can be a little bit more of a relaxed event, or it can be a massive art style, just depending on the amount of people that we have.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and we're rolling into spring. I think I saw something about a Mother's Day lunch or brunch you're having.
Absolutely.
And some other events. Can you share some more about those?
Of course. So as we step into spring, of course, we have Easter that we're preparing for,
Yes.
the graduation weekend that we're getting ready
Yes.
for, Mother's Day.
Yes.
And not that we have any choice in it, but graduation and Mother's Day falls on the same weekend this year. So what we're doing is, of course, we're expecting, especially for weekends like graduation, we're expecting a full house. Our in-rooms are going to be full. The restaurant's going to be full. So we always recommend reservations on big weekends like that. But for that reason, we always put as much information on our website in advance as we can. So as soon as we know what time we're holding dinner or doing a lunch or brunch or anything like that, we'll put it on our website. And then as soon as we know the specific menu as well, we'll put that on our website. So for instance, we are doing a Mother's Day dinner. In the past, when it wasn't on JMU's graduation weekend, we would do a Mother's Day brunch just because brunch seems to be a little bit more family friendly. But yeah, things like that, we just have to roll with the punches kind of every year and see how it would work. So since it landed on graduation weekend, and since we'll have groups of larger families in town, groups of 7, 8, 10, etc., we decided to do a dinner on that day instead for Mother's Day, so that those families that are still in town for graduation can come in and have a dinner with us. And it's much easier to seat people that way for a dinner than it is for a brunch. But those are kind of restaurant specific things. That's the nitty gritty of a restaurant that you don't have to get into, I suppose. But yeah, so Jenna Kinney, who we had talked about earlier as our general manager, she does a fantastic job of communicating with guests for events like that. Easter, Mother's Day, she's definitely the point of contact, but I'm always here. So if anybody calls, I'm happy to chat with them and refer them to Jenna as well. But Jenna is fantastic about organizing private events such as an Easter brunch, Mother's Day dinner, and that sort of thing.
Oh, just perfect segue into my next question. If a laugher is interested in having a private event or a wedding at Joshua Wilton House, other than contacting Jenna Kinney, obviously, what else should they know?
Yeah, I would highly recommend they take a peek at our website just for a basic information and understanding of the house. We do have a private event inquiry form, or a whole page really for private events. So it tells you a little bit about what we can do for the menu. We can really do everything from past appetizers and a cocktail hour that then transitions into a 3 or 4 course seated meal with a champagne toast, to something that's, not as involved or not as fine dining. So some guests just want to do stationary appetizers or a buffet. And so we're really happy to chat with whatever guest and whatever their budget is. We can generally work within that budget and that price range. So if somebody, for instance, is doing a wedding and they want the whole 9 yards, we're happy to give them 10 yards. I don't think that's how that saying goes, but we'll go the extra mile to give them more than what they need. But if guests sometimes just want to have a small event, 10, 12 people, we can give them their own dining room. We can give them their own separate space. The one good thing I have to say about being a house is that we do have these small dining rooms. So it's a home that the living room is now a dining room. What used to be the parlor is now a dining room. So we're able to block off different areas of the homes so that it is truly private. It's not one big open space in a restaurant. We actually are able to give you your own private space. So with that, guests are able to select the size of space that they want. If it's 30 or 40 people, we can give them their whole wing of the house to themselves and nobody can go back there. If it's 10, 15 people, we can give them their own room. And if it's 100 people or more, they can have the whole house to themselves. So we're very, very flexible with spacing. We work with a lot of great florists in town too for weddings or anything like that. So we're happy to have people come in and set up ahead of time for balloons and decorations. But yeah, all of that information can be found on our website as well if anybody was interested. And they can fill out a basic form on the website as well that has the anticipated date of the event, their estimated number of people, price range, all of those things. And that actually gets sent straight to Jenna. So Jenna can get all that information up front, and then she'll reach out to them and be able to already know when they're looking at and how many people and what the event is for.
Oh, that's great. Now, so the wedding ceremonies can take place at Joshua Wilton House also.
Absolutely. Yeah, I highly recommend getting married here. Not that I did it. Maybe one day. But no, I do highly recommend getting married here because we have the in-rooms. So bride and groom get a room. The in-laws can have their own rooms as well. The, best man, the maid of honor, they can have their own rooms. Everybody gets breakfast in the morning. So, and maybe some mimosas. So some hair of the dog the next morning after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do everything from winter weddings, fall weddings, spring weddings. We have a beautiful back patio. So we have had guests in the past do a large tent out there in December with heaters on and strands of garland and Christmas lights. And it was beautiful to have a winter wedding outside. But yeah, we do plenty of weddings inside as well. And when our chef's garden outside during the summer is in full bloom, we often offer to have guests get married by the chef's garden because it does make for such a beautiful backdrop. Yeah. So in the way that I've actually been constructing the garden in the past few years, I've left a space purposefully open as kind of like a gazebo space for guests to stand. And I kind of grow vines all the way around it and stuff. So even in the garden, there's a spot for a bride and groom to stand at. But yeah, I highly recommend weddings here also because we have some of the best chefs in the area. We have some of the best bartenders in the area. So really you get to walk in and just sit back because we take care of the food and the wine and the cocktails and breakfast and your in rooms, all kinds of stuff.
I'm glad I asked the question,
yeah,
Jake.
The only thing I can't do is actually wed people myself. I'm not an efficient. maybe that's the next step. And then we can offer that as a service as well.
You'll be the one-stop shop. Everything
that's the last thing I need.
That's it. That's
the last thing I need to do.
Well, get it done, Jake.
I know. I'll put it on my list.
Okay, you do that. Well, let's wrap up with this. How best can people follow Joshua Wilton House on social media or otherwise to connect with you and get more information?
People can follow us on Facebook if they were interested at the Joshua Wilton House. You can just type that in and it will come up. If there's more than one, we're in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And on Instagram, we are _Wilton_house. So the Wilton House, but with underscores in between. And if you can't find those, you can always go to our website at joshuawilton.com. And we have our Facebook and our Instagram linked on there as well.
Great. Laughers, we'll be sure to put that information for you in the show notes. So you don't have to worry about it if you're working out or driving. Please be safe. You can check that out in the show notes later. Plus, we will also have for you that discount promo code LAUGH15 so you can buy that delicious gourmet popcorn at a discount. Just go to the website Preposterous, that's PREPOPSTEROUS.com. Preposterous.com, and that will be for you in the show notes as well. And we will be sending you some, Jake.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, you're going to love it. It's so delicious. Yeah. I mean, you got a sweet craving, you got a salty craving. They've got you covered at Preposterous.
Right up my alley. Yep, yes. That's exactly what I need.
Well, you are getting it. And thank you so much, Jake. This has been so wonderful and fun chatting about all things Joshua Wilton House today with you. I've learned so much, and I can't wait for my next visit there to try some of your Joshua Wilton House happy hours. You know what I'm saying? So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I hope I see everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me those. And Dawn, I'll be seeing you for a drink and a crawl through some of our crawl spaces then.
Yes, I'm so excited. I can't wait for that. Thanks again, Laughers. To connect and learn more about Joshua Wilton House, be sure to visit their website at joshuawilton.com, JOSHUAWILTON.com today. We'll put that in the show notes for you as well, like we talked about. And lastly, and most importantly, thanks for tuning in, Laughers. Out of all the podcasts out there, you picked us, and we think that's pretty darn special, just like you. Until next time, keep smiling. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by X2 Comedy. We'll be dropping a new podcast every Wednesday, so check back for another uplifting episode. Come to an X2 Comedy show or let us bring one to you. To find out more, head to x2comedy.com. Be sure to share this podcast with a friend, and until next time, cheers.